Well, here we have another Disney movie, and another one in which it tries to to appeal to people all over the world. I mean, it's no stranger that Disney, they always want to make movies based from that are based on different cultures, let's say. Whether it's being from China, whether it being from Mexico, whether it being from Iceland. Well, you know, inspiration is everywhere. So, and this time they decided to tackle Colombia this time with their latest film, Encanto. Honestly, I was a little bit, of course, anticipating this film, mostly because, well, the last time Disney gave us a movie, which is none other than Raya and the Last Airbender. I mean, Raya and the Last Dragon, yes. Well, the thing is that I was okay with it. Certainly... Colombia is certainly close to my my home country, Ecuador. Some of the cultures are a little bit similar. They kind of share also kind of like their certain history, of course. Which I'm not gonna go too much into details because it's kind of like a big history. In which involves both Colombia, Ecuador, and Venezuela. Again, it's kind of like a long history. But either way, if you ask me, even though we were kind of like neighboring countries, I never been to Colombia. The closest thing I got into Colombia was years ago when I was on a family road trip, and out of curiosity my father decided to cross the border, and we just crossed it for like, what was it, kind of like 30 minutes or so until we decided to turn back because it was because there was nothing much to see. We were just getting some scenery out of it. And also, I do want to remind you that it's not the first time that Disney tried to appeal the Latin American community. I mean, I know that when you think about that, it's usually Coco, but not exactly. There are some other examples. Although the one that pops out of my head, it was one that was really early, that was called Saludos Amigos, which this one is, it was kind of like a collection of cartoon shorts trying to homage mostly kind of like South America, in which most notably we had, you know, the airplane who wanted to deliver a letter and have to cross the Aconcagua. I remember also the one with Goofy teaching the ways of the gaucho, and so on, so on. It's been a long time since I watched that one, but of course it had, oh yeah, I also had Donald and Jose Carioca in this one. Although the biggest thing that I do remember is that Saludos Amigos, well, let's say that it didn't sit well out into the Latin American audience, at least some of them. Most notably because one guy who saw that movie, he didn't like it, but thanks to that, he created his own comic, which is none other than a Latin American comic called Condorito. I'll leave it by that if you wanna know more about that. But I'm technically dragging on whenever I think about Encanto, in which it's another Disney movie. I'm usually, you know me that I like Disney, again, except some of their business practices, but either way I can't deny that it's still a big industry, and there are some things that I do like. Although Encanto wasn't exactly something that caught my attention, but still, I just want to watch it because, let's say that I'm a sucker about that. But before I talk to you about the movie, let me direct this also, because there's only one thing that that I want to tell about this movie. But it's not in the movie in particular. Because whatever my opinion is about Encanto, I wanna blow my steam by saying that going to that movie was also one of the worst theater experiences that I had in my life. It was god-awful. And why? Because the theater was packed, but stupid adults, they thought that it was a great idea to bring their 2-year-old children or less to see the movie theaters. It was a nightmare, let me tell you, because during the whole movie, those kids, they didn't stop crying. And worse is that I was sitting next to one guy who also had this little toddler, a 2-year-old, no, kind of like a 1-year-old child. And during the whole movie, this kid goes, and even though the father tried to shut the kid up by giving the bottle and everything, the kid never stopped. And it distracted me from the whole movie that it gave me a hard time. And it doesn't help that he wasn't the only noisy baby on the movie theater. I mean, God, parents, why bring children? Oh, it's a Disney movie, it's a kids movie. There are people also watching the Disney movie, and it doesn't necessarily have to be kids. And out of courtesy, don't have them, don't keep them there. And it can't be kids movies. Why? Because these children, they don't have their attention span developed to the point that they cannot focus on what's on the screen. And honestly, these children are too young to be on a screen. You know, this makes me think about the whole generation of that we're growing up with television. Yeah, I did grow up with television, but I didn't touch a television, and I didn't know about it until I was at least kind of like 6-year-old or older, when at least I can enjoy at least the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. That was a miserable experience because of that kid. And other kids. So much that I even went to the customer service and gave my complaint. And thank goodness that the guy listened to me and at least gave me an explanation saying that they are indeed trying to tell corporate that movie theaters, they should not allow to bring babies. And I hope this turns into a law because they have no business being in a movie theater because they don't have the enough attention span to focus on what's on a screen. But I gave them a warning because that was not the first time that this thing happened. It mostly happens on Disney films. And the next time this happens again, and I give them the warning, the next time that happens, I'm gonna ask for the refund. But not this time. But still, that was a really, really salty moment in the movie theaters. So much that I was kind of a little bit having a hard time even enjoying the short film that it had. And I really liked the short film. The short film called Far From the Tree, in which it centers around these kind of like these raccoons, a father and a son, in which they go out to the beach to get some food, but of course the child is, you know, being a kid, being excitable, wants to play and all this stuff, but his father, who he had kind of like this badass scar, making it kind of like looking like a Yakuza raccoon or something like that. He's like, no, you stay in the shadows, you keep hitting or something like that. But the kid was so excited that he disobeys the father many times until, of course, he gets found by a coyote, and of course it scratched up it almost gets killed. It has kind of like a scratch on his snout. The father rescued him, and of course it berates after that it berates him you know, because he's saying like, why you disobey me or something like that. You have to be sick. I kept you into the shadow so you don't get killed or something like that. And of course then we get kind of like a time skip in which the child raccoon grows up. He now has a scar, and of course he now has a child, and the child also acts excited, and of course history repeats itself until it begins to think like, wait, my father, yeah, he was too harsh on me. Maybe I was being too harsh, even though I had kind of like the same fears that if I let my child, you know, into the shadows, it's gonna end up almost being killed by a coyote. And of course, then they decide to, you know, do things together, teaching him, you know, how things goes, and it was cute, let me tell you, and I really like the message that it goes. First of all, it does show that this turn of insecurity is kind of also a little bit generational, that people tend, of course, being overprotective or insecure because probably our parents, they protect us. They were a little bit too overprotective, but unfortunately when they get too overprotective, we don't get to technically enjoy some of the aspect of our life, because, well, when you are young, life is short and you miss all those things, and you miss all those playtime things. And I like that, of course, that the message kind of say that we can also learn from that, in which we cannot make the same mistakes from our old folks, and find a way in which you can both play and at the same time be there to teach them where not to go, how to be much more clever, but without going, you know, kind of like a learning process. So I really recommend Up the Tree, in which I also really admire that it's also is 2D, and I'm a sucker of that one. Whew, boy, let me tell you, I've been talking about this dang experience with and now the short film that I'm supposed to be talking about, Encanto. Okay, now that I finally got out of my way that experience on the movie theaters, as well as the obligatory short film, now I can tell you about what I thought about Encanto, the movie. And let me tell you that I actually liked this film. It was actually pretty good, but it wasn't great. It wasn't great because I kind of noticed a few problems in it. Although when I talk about problems, I'm not gonna tell you that it deprives from what from if you like the movie or not, or saying that, oh my god, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, it's another Oscar for Disney, and you will see, guys, and this is another Oscar for Disney. Disney is gonna take all the Oscars in the world, so obviously Encanto is gonna be one of them. Good lord, I mean, we need more international films to become mainstream. I mean, last year I think Wolfwalker was much better than Soul. So yeah, and considering that we didn't get it much with Pixar, the only thing that we got from Pixar is Luca. Although, honestly, if I had to compare this one, I think I like Luca better. This one, I kind of understand the approach. and it is sympathetic as well as kind of like a likable film. So I kind of applaud some of the things that they were trying to do. Although, again, I kind of have problems, but it's mostly has to do with a few contradictions that I did found, which I'll get to that. But either way, I think it is time for me to talk about Encanto. Encanto, it takes place kind of like in how can I say this? It takes place in this village, kind of like a very traditional old village from that is typical from like an American. There is in that village, it has been raised by a matriarch of the house because of a magic candle, and from generation to generation, this house, in which they call it casita, it begins to build up with all this magic. It becomes sentient. The house, do magical stuff. And every generation of the family, each one gets themselves a gift, which basically is given some kind of superpower or magical powers. For example, one gets really strong, or one can make flowers. One can have healing power with the cooking, or someone can become a doppelganger, and so on, so on, so on. But then we got our main protagonist named Mirabel. Mirabel, unfortunately, she didn't get her powers. In the day that she was supposed to get her powers, she didn't get it. So at first, you notice that she was like, well, whatever. I'm gonna try to do my best with the family, support them in any way they want. Even though everyone is like, no. Even though they love her, she's kind of like the awkward of the family, because, well, she doesn't have powers. The only one that actually have a liking on her is this little kid that she helps, and the day that he's gonna get her his power, which is none other than becoming the Beastmaster. Yeah, talking to animals. But then things happen when Mirabel she gets kind of like this omen in which the house is collapsing. And well, she decides to go into it because she thinks that the magic is going out. And while she's making her own detective work, she's realizing that something is happening to the house, and that it's losing its magic. So everyone, of course, is also kind of little by little also losing their power, starting out with kind of like the strong woman, and there is. And that's basically kind of like the plot of the movie, in which, in a way, for some reason, I couldn't help but people are technically comparing this movie kind of like the superhero movie, in which everyone's a superhero except for kind of like the odd one and all these things. In a way, it's kind of like the first two episodes of My Hero Academia. Yeah, I'm surprised no one gave this movie a My Hero Academia comparison, and I can see that. At least for the two episodes of that anime, because of course that our protagonist then gets her power. But in this one, I like the angle, and honestly, our character Mirabel, she's likable enough. She's perky. She tries her best. And you kind of also feel sorry for her because no one takes her seriously. Even the matriarch of the house, she kind of acts a little bit like a cold-hearted. She acts cold-hearted to the point that it was almost villainous. Well, she's not the villain, but either way, you can tell that even though this character has her own problems. It feels harsh on that aspect of the family, and honestly, the emotion that our character gets is indeed pretty believable. I like that aspect of the film, and seeing her trying her best even without her powers, but she's still resourceful. It's good. I got invested into the story and want to see where it goes. And although there are other characters that I do also have to mention. The matriarch of the house, I already mentioned right now. Mirabel's parents, are kind of like the typical goofy parents. Although it kind of there's kind of like this running gag in which the father is allergic to bees and everything. I like the kid who is kind of like a doppelganger. There's also one that has super hearings. There's also kind of like the sister who she's gonna marry. She's gonna marry kind of like the most handsome guy of the town, who is. Oh, she has the powers of making flowers. Kind of like a good poison ivy. But she has kind of like her teenage hostility against our protagonist, and also I do want to mention that there is also a key character that he's kind of became the black sheep of the family. Is a guy who they call him Tio Bruno, and which is nobody talks about Bruno and everything. I'm not going to reveal too much about this. You know what? A little bit, yeah. Let's say that this guy, he's almost like, if you saw the movie called The Boy, and if you've seen the twist of that movie, let's say that this guy is that. It's kind of like a goofy version of the twist of the movie The Boy. And I was surprised that this guy is voiced by none other than the pest himself, John Leguizamo. It was kind of funny to see that he was actually playing a literal pest on the family, as well as a literal, kind of like a literal pest inside the house. But don't worry, he's not annoying like in that movie. Actually, he comes off as being kind of like a really tragic character. But still, having all these coincidences and knowing that it was John Leguizamo, wow. So, it's Disney. So, do you expect me to talk about the voice acting and the animation? Well, it's pretty obvious. Yeah. It's well animated and all these things. I mean, what do you expect from Disney? I mean, they've been taking the Oscars for a long time, and with using the same techniques over and over again. That it's no surprise to me. It's no surprise. Although I do kind of see that sometimes that they're technically the same. It's just that. It just kind of like different characters, sometimes different styles, different designs, but the style and all these things are basically just technically the same, like any other Disney movie that you can see. Well, it's not exactly kind of like a bad thing. You can tell that this is mostly me being used to those digital Disney films. But I do also have to say that, well, they did have to do their research on, the character design, the clothing, and the structure of the house itself, which at least I will give it this, that it is interesting the facet that they go with the house. Because the house itself is kind of its own character, of course, in which the house technically is kind of alive, almost like they're living with a poltergeist. A friendly poltergeist, and communicates with everyone, by moving bricks, moving around. That's kind of like, I like that aspect. That's kind of like the creative aspect that this movie has. And the house kind of has each time someone gets a gift, or is about to get a gift, it gets this door in which it's basically, I think it's basically kind of like their room. It also makes their own, how can I say, it kind of makes itself its own history. History is pretty nice, and also some of the the secrets inside the house and everything. So much that of course they have a John Leguizamo living behind the walls. Yeah. Okay, but also, what else I can say about this house? I already mentioned that I like the things that they do. I like that it's kind of like there are even some darker aspects that inside the house. I'm actually like that something that they decided to go a little bit more traditional on the setting, in which it feels like a post-colonial Latin American setting. With the clothing, the where it looks. The design of the house I maybe could describe it that is very very Spanish inspired, and this is also a history from Latin America that after the era of the conquistadores. A lot of the original culture from Latin America, ranging from Ecuador, Venezuela, Chile, and all these South American countries, they were taken over by the Spanish, and then some of their culture began to mix up. Even some of the construction of the houses during that time. So there is kind of, although we could say that the casita looks like. Colombian. I can't help to see it more Spanish than just originally Colombia. But again, this is not exactly taking the smear out of Colombia, because that was part of that's history. That's how the history happened in this one. So yeah, that's pretty much I also have to say. It feels with the house being magical and all all the family member having this these powers. I have a little bit kind of a little bit raising my eyebrows when I heard people saying that the producer kind of described the movie being kind of like magical realism. Although I'm not 100% into that. Actually, yeah, magical realism is kind of like a literary technique that originated from, I heard from Germany, in which is basically putting fantastic elements in, but is still grounded on real life. Although this one, it feels more magical than just magical realism in one way or another. But honestly, I think that it could have worked more as a novel more than a movie. But that's me without not having experienced it. If it's about magical realism, I can tell you that probably the closest thing that is also from Colombia is when I read this book called Chronicles of a Death Announced, Chronicles of a Death Foretold, written by the guy who actually kind of mastered that kind of style, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And I know that this guy was kind of like one of the inspirations for that movie. That's pretty much some 2 cents that I just want to say. I'm not gonna go too much into details. But also speaking about the history of it, you know what? No. I'll leave it aside from that one, because I do also want to talk about the music, in which the music a lot of the music is they're made by Luis Manuel Miranda, and that's me coming from In the Heights. Although I think that In the Heights had better music than this one. This one is still pretty Disney-ish. Although they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I didn't get to catch on with the music. But maybe it's because I have a loud-ass kid next to me. Thanks, kid. Now it's time for me to deflate the ego of this movie because I know that and like usual, I'm the kind of guy who don't like to overhype. And now, like usual, I'm not the kind of guy who like to overhype things. Because at this point, I know that many people will go and say, wow, Encanto is the greatest movie ever and all these things. It's a Disney movie that is really good for children. It's really good for children, even though they're gonna be loud-ass kids. Okay, calm down. But honestly, there are some things that I do want to, well, make an observational criticisms. In which, well, my first instance is probably my fault or probably the fault of the people involved into it. But there's something that really makes me question some things. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I do my best to get into the magic and all these things, thinking that, well, it's technically magic and all these things, but sometimes when I notice something, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I'm talking more about when we get kind of like, there was a kind of like these moments of the flashback scenes in which it kind of talk about about how the whole thing started, in which it all started out with the matriarch, in which he had her husband killed by some people who exiled them, and so she gets this magical candle that gave her hope, and then build up that small house that gives them powers and everything. But here's the issue that I have with that flashback. It mostly has to do with when the movie takes place, because looking at when these people were exiled, I noticed their clothing. And yeah, they have the post-colonial clothing, the typical from Latin American, from the village people, from the mountain people, or well, it's more kind of like a Oriental people, with the Latin American clothing and everything. But even though that those clothing is still also part of Spanish inheritance, from my speculation, just in case. But then these people were exiled by these people. But then I kind of begin to notice something that rubbed me the wrong way. It comes a scene in which we get kind of like a silhouette of these people. Of the people that kind of technically invade them. And what I noticed more is that, number one, they were riding horses. And in the history of the colonialism, one of the biggest reasons why the indigenous people lost to the Spanish is because of the horses. Horses was something never seen on South American land, and it showed these people had horses, and then when the silhouette happened, it was kind of a little bit foggy and very vague, but I kind of began to notice that a little bit they had kind of like this European armors, and I swear that I saw European sword, which kind of makes it feel that that probably during the flashbacks, it could have taken place during the age of the conquest, which is technically the 1500s, but a little bit contradicts a little bit of how these people, what they were wearing, and the kind of culture that they were going through. And then, of course, the setting of the events of the movie is technically 50 years later, which honestly it gets me really, really kind of like baffled in a way that they made a mistake. I know that they wanted to keep the time periods vague, but I spent a history of learning about the history of the Spanish during my high school years, so much that it kind of a little bit nagged me in the wrong way. If I can see that silhouette again and find out that I was wrong, I could take it back. But it kind of rubbed me a little bit in the wrong way, especially when, and honestly, if it kind of takes place in kind of like in a little bit of that time period, it kind of makes me question when a song they make Hercules references, and then they also made telenovela references, which it is out of place. And I know, Disney tried to get that Genie, Aladdin, Robin Williams era joke style, but I think that there was a reason, of course, why the Genie can also see into the future and kind of break those rules. Or sometimes sometimes you feel that some of the absurdities had to be earned a little bit, and this one didn't feel like that. And like Hercules, but Hercules, it kind of earned itself because it kind of shows up being more of a comedy than just taking seriously the Hercules thing. But either way, these historical things are kind of rubbing me a little bit on the wrong way in a way or another. And finally, I do want to tell you, before I go with the spoilers, is that I am not fond of the ending. You were doing great on that move, on the end. There was something on the end that I felt like, wow, you're doing great. You're doing great. I'm really loving it. I'm loving what they're doing. They're doing it. They're doing it. Yes, 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 yes. What are you doing? No. 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 You couldn't drop the magic. You couldn't let it go. You couldn't let it go. Trust me that was unintentional. So yeah, I do have kind of like that problem with the ending that I felt a little bit too convenient, I'll say, or too convenient, and because, well, it does contradict the message that the movie was actually giving. Let alone that I kind of want to ignore that the movie doesn't specifically say exactly why the magic is waning out, because, well, it kind of forcefully trying to say that, well, it's the power of the family or something like that, and that something is wrong. It never goes explicitly saying why that happened, but then when the movie kind of comes up kind of like into its climax, and it kind of goes a little bit more touching, I'll say, but then we get kind of like this ending that is going to be kind of like nice. You're gonna break in the mold like a lot of Disney movies. Nope, you went there. You couldn't let it go. And because of that, I think I want to go a little bit more detailed about the ending. So you know what? I'm gonna go with this enchanting spoilers. So you watch the movie. Are you ready? Okay, here goes. So basically, this Bruno guy, the Tio Bruno, the reason why he became he became kind of like the black sheep is because his power was basically foretelling the future. And one of those futures is that apparently the house is gonna break because of Mirabel. So much that because he had kind of like a reputation of telling everyone, you know, that bad things are gonna happen in the future, well, nobody likes him. And honestly, I like that thing. Because it's kind of understandable, and I get that too, in which we tend to be kind of like giving warnings, and sometimes the warnings comes out as being, well, pessimistic, negative, and not very nice or something like that. But because people there are so focused on living in bliss, and because ignorance is bliss, the poor guy, he, despite being exiled, he couldn't let go of the family members and all these things. And the poor dude, he kind of became insane in itself. And of course, Maribel, when she actually took pity on him, considering that she also became ostracized by the family, just because she doesn't have powers. Although, thank goodness that she has kind of like a loving family, or else she's gonna, and she had kind of like bullies. But this is not me, again, giving My Hero Academia comparisons. And of course, she finds out that she had to make peace with her sister that she kind of hates. There's kind of like this forceful song, I may say, oh, we got a hug and all these things, but she doesn't get too much of a context out of it. That's a little bit kind of like annoying, but it does dwell up kind of like a nice song that has these characters in it. But then, of course, it wasn't exactly kind of like the thing. The thing is that because the matriarch is a little bit too uptight on, you know, things have to go like my way and all these things, and Maribel, she never accepts her. Finally, Mirabel snaps. She tells her that she's the one that is taking the magic out of the house, and of course, the house breaks, and Mirabel escapes. And the matriarch finally sees that she has done something wrong with her daughter, and she finds her. They make peace with both Mirabel and Bruno, because she tells them, you know, her story, her backstory, and of course that's what happened when I find the contradiction in the time period. And I like that they did find that Mirabel just said that, well, yeah. You suffered enough, so you brought us together. We don't need kind of like the magic. We lost the magic and all these things, but we built this kind of like this village and everything. I mean, look, I don't have powers, and look where I am. I love my family, and I will help anything, and don't need the powers. So finally, everyone is happy, and then the village people, of course, they just go and say, we're gonna reconstruct the house. You made us good. You were for us during the whole time, so we're gonna help out. And I love that moment. I love the moment in which they say that, you know what, we don't need magic. We can construct we can construct it, and they begin to build the house. It didn't become as beautiful as it is, but then I began to have the signs in which they gave Mirabel, you know, to put the final doorknob, and I was like, no, don't do it, movie, don't do it. She puts the doorknob, and then the house magically becomes alive again, and everyone got their superpowers again, except Mirabel, of course. And I was like, you couldn't let it go. You couldn't let it go. And honestly, that contradicts the message of the movie. it contradicts Mirabel's quest in that she was special enough not having powers, and that sometimes and that because all the people were so dependent on their powers that they began to think that they can do anything, and technically this is the reason why they ostracized with her. They couldn't empathize with that character, but now they got their superpowers back, and so technically they only learned that, oh yeah, now we're gonna be nicer to her because even though she doesn't have powers. I'm sorry. You can call it. I mean, it's not exactly the worst message I have seen. Honestly, I found Raya and the Last Airbender, Raya and the Last Dragon. The message of that movie was worse. But Encanto, at least I know that they tried. But you know what? As much as I complain about that ending, I pass it. I can pass it because I can understand that they didn't want it to go a little bit too Pixar, or in which the magic is lost and everything. But either way, it kind of feels a little bit contradicting on the message. So technically call it a little bit of a nitpick. But anyway, with that said, I will go with that ends my spoilers. So anyway, Encanto, Disney's Encanto. If you like Disney and other things, I highly recommend it. Of course, don't bring the babies. They're not gonna watch the movie. And also give a little bit more credit also to the short film. Far from the Tree is actually has a really good message. Encanto, it has also a great message. A little bit, how can I say, they flub it up. Some inconsistencies on the a little bit the time period, but it's mostly because of they try to be vague. But again, if I find kind of like enough evidence that they didn't flub it up, maybe I can change my opinion. The ending a little bit contradicts itself, the message, but it's still passable. Maybe also, I forgot to also mention to say that while it is kind of like a musical, you feel sometimes that the musical kind of stopped the tracks on the storytelling. But you know what? Every musical is kind of like that. But still, Encanto is enjoyable enough to be a good Disney movie. Not the best in my opinion. I still have more of a soft spot for Lilo and Stitch and Zootopia. But for the run of the mill, I think I like Encanto better than Moana. That I can say. But either way, Encanto was just, well, nothing else to say. Encantador.